Let's let everybody get into their routers. Sriram, I restarted your router. You're good? Great. Pardon? He's already issued a ROA? Sriram's already issued a ROA, you said? So, okay. Yeah, we'll walk you through it in a sec. Are you in your router? Well, this gets you in your router if you're a Juniper or a Cisco. Tell me if you have trouble. How do you install SSH on your Mac? I think it comes normal. I don't know. Or do you need Xtools? I forget. SSH is built in. Okay. But you just put it in the floppy? Okay. You just put the floppy in the side. And no, not on the 13-inch Mac. You have to use the 3.5-inch floppies. The big Macs like the 17 can take the 8-inch floppies. Pardon? Who's user 11 should be a Cisco. Are you user 11? I take it if that's okay. Oops. He says he's user 11. Pardon? Can I have a user ID? I don't have one. I didn't track. Yeah. Take 15, take 16. I thought Sriram's using 10. I fixed it for him. Who is? Sriram is 10. He's supposed to be 10. I can handle prefix hijacking. I cannot handle user hijacking. Go back to 10. Get out of somebody else's router. Do you remember the okay, is everybody in their routers? And then we'll go back to the well, let's go through the router first to get you set up. Then we'll go back to the GUI and play. Is everybody in there Cisco or Juniper? Okay. Please check that you have on Juniper your BGP peerings that you should have. And on Cisco, also check that you have two BGP peerings, show IP BGP summary. You should have two BGP peerings, one with 65,000, AS65,000, one with 65,001. Okay? You should be getting 40-something routes for them both, from each of them, to be formally correct. Sir? Pardon? Oh, you mean I forgot to? Oh, that's because I don't have that darn slide over here. The Cisco slides are out of date. My apologies. But if you're a Cisco operator, show IP, well, here we go. Hold on. Wow. I could have sworn. There we go. All I have to do is get my cursor over there somewhere, and I should be able to do a show IP BGP summary. So that will tell you if you have your BGP peerings right there. Show IP BGP summary. SU will do. And no, it's not super user. Sudo get me a sandwich. So everybody have their nice peerings with those two external routers? So, let's figure out where I was supposed to be here. That looks like this. So you want to configure, Juniper, don't start typing this in. Cisco, you want to configure your RPKI server. You'll need to go into, conft. First you'll have to know what your AS number is, and it's closely related to your user number. It's 651XX. Okay, and then you type this line. Except here it is. That's the theory up top, and this is the practice down below. So you type router BGP 651XX, BGP RPKI server, and select the port, etc. Juniper folk, you don't have to type all that garbage. Oops. There's a cheat sheet that you can cut and paste from. Is there a Cisco router geek who's not? Would you help Russ? Because he can type the stuff on the screen, but there's stuff missing from the screen. Fenner, what are you doing here? Fenner's not good enough. Okay. I didn't recognize you, and you know why. Nice to see you. So, anybody else need help? Sir.
I'm still having the same old problem for some reason. I'll just follow along with it.
Not use the Windows Telnet client. Do not use the Windows Telnet client. Go get something called Putty. Yes. Sorry, I don't normally think about that. Some of my best friends are Windows users, but I really wouldn't want one to marry my sister. When you get it, start talking to each other or look bored or something, so I know it's time to move ahead. You in trouble or are you bored? What's the matter? What number are you? Pardon? Shout. Say something. There. Fenner will bail you out. Okay, Junos folk. Remember, you have to do policy. Warren, you want to look up. Warren, you want to look up. Juniper folk, look at the slides for a sec. You want to do three things. Two of them are in that cheat sheet. One's policy, One's routing options. And the third is apply the policy. None of it comes. You come configured with BGP because there's no sense teaching you how to use BGP, but your routers do not come pre-configured with the stuff for RPKI-based origin validation because that's what the workshop's about. Pardon? Oh, pardon? Load merge term? Yeah, I tried to make it fairly easy. Watch out though, in the load merge term, the very easy I made it, you may need to deal with local address. Because normally it would work in real routers, but internally inside this we're using net 10, and so it's unreachable, and so it could accidentally pick the wrong source. One is the one it's talking to, it's the internal BGP peers, it's your internal network, the border routers. And the external address is a real external address. A true global address. You can ping home if you want. I don't think I put DNS servers in there, but you're welcome to do that. We will hose it all out after you play. Okay, now Juniper users, when you're through, you should be able to do this command, show validation session brief. And you should see that you actually are paired with a cache server. You are? And then you should be able to do show validation database brief. Then I don't believe, I hope that you lied to me that when you said show validation session brief, showed the session state as up.
Actually, its state is connected.
Then you have not configured properly. I don't know what you left out. There were once again, there are three things. The routing policy, which you can cut and snipe from the web page. Observe the next to the last line of that slide.
Local address?
Local address, yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't think I'd want to cut and paste that line. Well, I set you up for problems in the text file that you're cutting and pasting from. That's in comment braces. Okay, and then policy, and then apply the policy, and then check the server. Okay, Syskoids, you just have one line. That line, BGP RPKI server, and now you can check how your server is going. Show IP BG RPKI servers. Unknown? Oh, you guys aren't running ahead a little, are you? Okay, so who cannot see a database? Who has not got a database up? In other words, you got a good connection to a server. Yeah, that figures. You know how to find your source, Warren? Just show int terse. And there'll be one which is a 147.28 address, 147.28.254 point user. .200 user. Sir?
Question about your previous slide. It said preference 100. Can you talk about that?
Oh, okay. Good question. This will be fun. A router can peer with multiple caches at the same time.
No, my question is...
No. I understand your question. That is not local preference. The router can peer with multiple caches at the same time. In the configuration, it has preferences. If it loses connection with somebody, it starts at the highest preference that it hasn't got a connection to and tries it. It's just caches in order of preference.
Okay, so my follow-up question is, that's missing on this side?
Yeah, it'll come along eventually. I don't want to go running back and forth between Cisco and Juniper engineers on unreleased code and say, you've got a little thing that says, just not the way to make friends and influence people.
Sounds like you enjoy it. You still admit to doing it?
And so, in fact, there's a whole thing, if you'll read the document, the internet draft on RPKI router, where you can have multiple sessions up to multiple caches. If it fails, here's what you do, how you can restart. And one of the things I didn't tell you about in the RPKI router protocol is that there's the serial number, but if the TCP session fails and I go to restart, you've got a serial number, I've got a serial number. How do I know you didn't also restart? How do I know they're commensurate? How I know is we've also exchanged a nonce, a just random number, 32 bits. And if you still got that one and I've still got the matching other half of the dollar bill, then our serial numbers are commensurate and we can resume. So TCP can break, sessions restart, etc.
Thank you. Randy,
Sir?
How much history does...
How much history have they kept? That's implementation. Rob? How much, well, first of all, that's implementation dependent.
Yeah.
The cache must hold at least an hour because it is specified in the protocol that the poller, the router, should poll no less frequently than once an hour.
Okay.
But in fact, Rob probably keeps a horribly long amount of cache. Sorry. How much cache do you keep? RPKI router protocol, how much history you got? I come back 2 hours later with a serial number. Will you still have it?
I believe I'm currently saving a day's worth. That's adjustable, but I think we decided that it's not worth saving longer than that because of what the requirements are in the protocol for how often you're supposed to poll.
I assume there's something in the protocol that says, hey, I'm sorry, I don't know.
Yes. Yeah, you hand me the serial number and I hand you back a, what's the hand back?
There's a cache reset, I think is the name of the thing.
Yeah.
Ask for style.
This is very, in fact, if you look at the internals of the code, it says ax for an x for.
Old beat DNS geeks die hard. He's.
I'm kind of curious about coming from post, that is power on self-test, up to
fully loaded.
right, up to fully loaded. I guess starting
Unknown.
off, how
Everybody's
long,
unknown.
well, have you tested the time difference?
No, we're about to start testing scaling. Rob has code for the cache where he loads it with the full BGP table, creates fake ROAs for, the 350,000 entries we have today, and tries to stuff them up the routers. We haven't started doing that yet. Want to play?
Sure. The other thing is, in terms of coming from or loading up your table, you actually start with invalid routes, or that is unchecked routes.
Unknown.
And then you go to, okay.
Right.
So you can,
The router should start with everybody's unknown, because they are.
right. And how do you deal with that policy-wise? Because the
That's
policy,
your choice.
But the policy is,
I suggest you start with unknowns or downprefed, some but accepted.
okay, so,
What isn't in there is to switch gears. What isn't in there is to be able to, what you're heading towards, which is an idea that's occurred to me, I've kept my mouth shut about it so far, is one policy set for I'm loading first time. Another policy set with I've got a first load.
okay, but are you implying coming from no implementation toward global acceptance of this, or are you talking about what
Router, single
okay.
router I'm talking about.
coming up from
Yeah.
a boot
You might
to,
want to
okay.
have two different policies. I think that's a little too kinky. I think that I will make enemies.
I think
in
you
San
kind of want to
Jose?
start with something more along the lines of like the Juniper has, the idea of the IGP hasn't settled yet. You know, you want to reach that point at where,
I mean, if you start with things as unknown, and those are downpressed, I just go over it.
If
You
you,
got your router configured yet?
yeah,
Okay.
okay. If you start with just down-preffing things that are unknown, when you walk through and they suddenly become valid, then you up-pref them and, you know, they get preferred. So as long as you're not dropping them completely, stuff still works and works in sort of a sane way. Stuff that's unknown is still kind of usable. Stuff that somebody has attested to being useful, you actually trust more. Does that, unless I completely misunderstood your point. Okay.
Yeah. And that I think would be the normal, I expect that to be the normal configuration, is that, you know, as I said, the policy I expect people to have is valid, yes, give them up pref. Not known, boo. Invalid,
So at boot time, does that?
at boot time, the router starts off with everybody is unknown.
No, I'm, after that, I mean, what I was going to ask about was that if you had this scenario where you're down-preffing some of these routes, do you have, or do you cause some route searching that is not, this isn't RPKI
You
specific?
start with everything unknown, and then
Yeah, I get
and
that.
you load all of that.
You are
When you
correct. No,
validate-
just
when
say, you are correct. You start off with everything not known. You have essentially today's table.
Right,
You get a ROA that makes somebody valid.
right.
You up-pref them. All
Now
of
you
a
start
sudden,
hunting.
they could win where they'd lost before.
Right.
And indeed, that would cause out-thrash.
And when you process
That could cause a new best
when you
path.
process all the RPKI stuff, you have to rerun your decision process.
Ron Bonka. Looking at the bigger picture again, if we start out where we up-pref valids and down-pref not founds, that would be an incentive to some transport providers to not play the game, so they would be not found and their paths would not be used. What we probably need to do is go to the people who mediate peering and make sure that if you want to be a peer, you have to play the game.
Oops, I don't need this mic. I've got my own. What just amazes me about that is when you hear Sharon on Tuesday, note that in the base of all her models and her attacks are people trying to attract traffic. Providers trying to be bigger by having more traffic, not by shedding traffic. In fact, there are both motivations out there. Right? In fact, there are both motivations out there.
We like to think that ISPs want to attract traffic.
Maybe a good thing to do would be to say, I won't peer with you unless you play the validation game.
Total different, more like what we were talking about before, I think. Tony Tauber. If you have a less specific prefix and then somebody advertises a more specific, so you've got, I mean, you're not really comparing apples to apples in the route table, so what happens?
A ROA, if I have a,
You have a
if I have a
covering, right.
covering ROA for 16, somebody tries to announce a 24, that is invalid.
Well, Okay, so it just gets thrown out. I mean, the policy.
I would expect a policy to throw out invalids.
Right. So if you write your policy that doesn't, that keeps it with less preference, it will do the bad thing. Okay.
Then you could do that.
Yeah, yeah.
You could also smoke cigarettes.
Yeah.
It'll still work, but chances are you're not going to be hurting another customer.
Right.
Because the other customer is probably going to have specific intent. So you can still hide that specific intent.
Yeah.
Everybody who's playing have a table?
Surprisingly, it didn't go well.
Didn't go boom. So let's go back a little just on this screen and start playing with the GUI. You now have a GUI account, and our GUI friends here should have fixed your accounts up for you while we were at break. And you should see that you have a resource. Everybody in their GUIs, and everybody see the resource in their GUIs? Does anybody not see the resource in their GUIs? So, see where that finger points? Click it, please. You're laughing back there. I see you. Okay? And that takes you to the view of that prefix. And that prefix is unallocated, et cetera, et cetera. And see where the finger points? If you click that, you can issue a ROA for that prefix which you have.
It shows sub-allocation.
Pardon?
I have sub-allocation.
You have a suballocation? Oh, you made it?
No, I didn't.
You did it on their... Come on, folk, play nice. That's why they're laughing back there. God. It's the goddess's revenge. I used to sit in the back of the classroom, too. So clean up the mess you made. Apologize to the... Okay? So we want to issue a ROA. If you, I'm going to cheat here and go back a whole bunch of ways, just so that, and just I went back to this slide so you see the two ASs that are interesting. You can use different ASs if you want, but I suggest you choose one of 4128 and 3130 because it's being announced from both, so when you look at your routers, you'll see whichever one you did not choose is an attacker, and whichever one you did choose was the valid one, which is going to be the point of the whole exercise. So the upper little finger shows you where to type the AS number, which is going to be the valid AS number because you are going to issue a route origin, not attestation, whatever, ROA. I never remembered. And then, whoa.
We promise we won't jump ahead by any.
Whoa, that was heavy. And then you don't have to put in the max length. And the discussion of whether to put in max lengths or not is interesting, and we can have it sometime. And then you hit the submit query button, and you should see something wonderful like this. And you have now issued a ROA. And that ROA is wandering around the internet somewheres. You know, you've just done it here, and it's being issued and it's being published, and this probably is cycling once every 2 or 3 minutes, and then your router's cycling every couple of minutes, so it could take up to 5 minutes to get into the router. But remember, you know how to look in the router by seeing if your ROA has appeared in the table. Okay. So you can see when your ROA has appeared in the table for your cute little prefix. And it'll take a couple minutes. So to keep you from being bored in those couple minutes, I said a moment ago that the discussion of using max length is interesting. And it turns out that some of the software, I think APNIX, was for v4 prefixes, was automatically doing a max length of 32 if you didn't specify it. What happens, let's say you have a 16, and you use a max length of 24. This whole thing, as I said in the beginning of the first lecture, has the vulnerability that I can fake my AS. In other words, you've just issued a ROA for 4128. I could create a router with a fake AS of 4128, stick my real AS on the front of it, and go out there and steal the packets. Because this is not cryptographically signed. Now, the solution to that problem, the malicious attacker, we'll talk about on Tuesday. But for the moment, let's assume that I issue the ROA for 16 and I slice it up into 24s. Somebody could use that attack on any of the 24s, faking my AS number. If I issue the 16 with a max length of 16, nobody can announce a 24. Sriram gets credit, by the way, for describing this attack. So I advise you, if you're not going to chop your world up into 24s, then don't do a max length of 24. And then if somebody wants to attack, they're going to have to attack the whole 16, and you're going to notice that real quick. Okay? So don't get carried away with max length, unless you need it. All right? Are people seeing their ROAs appear magically? Woo-woo! Other people seeing their ROAs? Not yet.
On Junos, when you show the validation database, that's only showing.
Oops. There's a problem. Sorry about that. There may be, I'm not sure if it's here. Wait a minute or two more. If not, clear the validation. He may still have that bug. The Juniper code we're running, I got here at the hotel about 3 in the morning from overseas and got the message that new code's been installed. So I haven't gotten to run through this. So you may have to clear the Juniper validation cache state to get him to refetch. It won't do any damage anyway. It'll just speed your fetching it. So, you know. You clear validation, especially soft inbound. What's your 17? Is 17 published? Who has seen their stuff appear in the cache? There we go, Frank. Anybody else? Big Giggle Squad in the back? Nope. Bummer. Pardon? It'll be a second. We know where the problem is. Yep. The current code that Rob has for fetching and creating a valid cache goes one at a time. So if it hits one server that's in bad shape, it sits there for 2 minutes, banging its head against that stupid server. He's in the middle of writing parallel fetch code. But there is a bad server out there. I'm not naming names, Michael, even though the person with the bad server is in the room. They know it already.
Randy,
Sure.
on this show validation database,
Yeah.
the state, so you're seeing a list of rows. The state of that is not the state
That's
of
not
the
the-
routing table, correct?
No, it's not the prefix state. I'm not exactly positive what that state is.
Okay.
I believe what it is he has different states for ROAs, whether he's got it hot and fresh, whether it's old and questionable, et cetera, et cetera. I believe that's what that's showing. He's got, Hannes has a whole lot more state for dealing with the caches that he makes visible than the Cisco implementer does.
I got my row, by the way.
You got your ROA.
Yes.
There we go. ROAs should start popping up.
Currently see ROAs for 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 17, 18, 19.
Now, everybody can see everybody else's ROAs, so you just show that, you can tell who's up and who isn't.
Yeah, but who's 18 with the whole origin AS 23?
Who's 18? I don't know. There we go. Frank making trouble. He made trouble last week in Reykjavik, too. He's just a troublemaker. Pardon? Everybody's up. Okie doke. So let's go to the next wonderful thing, which is to look. Oh, no, Cisco, well, both of them have something nice. But let's look at a prefix. And in Juniper, you do it this way, and I've had to delete stuff to fit in PowerPoint. Okay. And you can see, in this case, I have two paths, one of them valid, one of them invalid, because remember, both being announced from Seattle and Dallas. So 3130 Seattle, and the ROA for this at the time I took this picture was Seattle was the valid one and Dallas was the invalid one. At the time I took this picture, let's see, which is a different prefix. 3130 was the valid one, Seattle's the valid, and Dallas was the invalid. Different prefix, same state. Cisco, he's done something nice, which is if you do the traditional show the BGP table, for each prefix he shows you what's valid and invalid. Juniper's hot on that trail. You got yours. Congrats. See, if you play nicely with the other children, things work out. So now if you want, you can go and switch your ROA the other way around. And if you gave it to 3130, now give it to 4128. Delete the other one. Or make ROAs for both of them, and you'll see them both as valid. And that's what you would do in a situation where you were preparing to switch. And you wanted to what's called make before break. We are just cruising right along here. And we really haven't got a whole lot more. Here's a nice thing that Hannes has added. I said, you know, you wanted to see all the invalid routes or all the valid routes. He's put in a command for that.
In your Juniper route validation template, this is his question.
Just a sec, let's grab you a mic.
Oh, sorry. Do you want to ask your question? Why don't you ask your question?
There we go.
This is Neil Shelley from Dine. No, sorry, that's loud. I was noticing the policy options for the Juniper example. You've got local preference set for the validated prefixes. They're preferred more, so they were set to 110. And the invalid ones are just left at default, so those are at 100. And then the unknown ones are actually devalued at 90. I'm trying to figure out why the invalid ones were apparently preferred to the unknowns.
Because wherever I cut and pasted that from did it, and it's wrong. Or not wrong, but certainly not the way I would advise you to configure your policy.
Just making sure, I guess.
Would you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Send me just the tersest of email
Will do.
to remind me to clean that up.
Sure.
I'm Randy at psg.com. Peter Sam George. PSG, Peter Sam George. Thanks for catching it. Yeah, you know, subject line is Juniper policy screwed. And I'll screaming won't do you any good, just enough context that I'll remember it. Go for it.
Eric Muller, Toy Point. Randy, is it a bug or a feature that Cisco doesn't reprocess the route map when the validity changes?
It's a bug.
Okay.
That code's 2 or 3 weeks old. Hey, that Juniper is in the state, I think it's fair to say this, that there's at least 3 test engineers banging on this right now. This release is about 3 weeks old, so in the next couple of weeks we'll have something new, fresh, and exciting. And I've about run out, by the way, so questions, experiments, catch the bugs, please.
On the router Todd from Dine again. On the router protocol, any reason why that was chosen to be left unencrypted? Is that by design specifically, or could we wrap some SSL on there?
Stop. Deep pool. Okay. Russ laughs. Okie doke. Let's go grab the foil. This is a really good question, by the way. I'm just trying to find the right foil. Oops, I didn't mean that. Okay. What Tom is asking is, why the heck isn't this encrypted? Okay. The reason it's not encrypted.
Let me re-ask the question. Why isn't it authenticated?
Yes! The man. Right. The problem is, of course, I could reach out for the IP address of this, and somebody could spoof me and give me all sorts of bad poop. Okay, the fact is that erased from this foil, okay, this is covered by object security. Whoever's running this cache inserted IANA's root certificate, and so this is valid by crypto object security. We didn't want... This is getting boring. This is getting boring. We didn't want this to have to do the crypto. But so this is running pure exposed clear text. Now, the way he originally asked the question is, why isn't it encrypted? It's not encrypted because these are public data. We don't care if anybody reads them. But the proper question, which he then asked, is, why is it not authenticated? When I reached out here, how do I know I didn't get a really nasty cache server? And in fact, if you'll read the current state of the RPKI protocol document, it's RPKI router protocol, it says that this runs over SSH and that these are configured with the keys of each other. But it turns out that SSH, while you can SSH into a router, and in some circumstances you can SSH out of a router, those routers do not have a nice SSH API exposed internally. So when the poor BGP coder goes to hack this stuff in, there's no SSH left for her. She's stuck. So, does she go get the approval from the people 5 miles away in Bangalore or wherever, in the next building or some horrible thing in these giant corporations? Or what do I do? Now, the IETF security purists will say, AO should be over AO. Okay? The only problem with on AO is it's not implemented on any servers. None. And the motivation for a server stack coder to implement AO is very, very small. Right? MD5. Well, the security purists in the IETF think MD5 is, you know, crap. That's Russ being polite and mixed company. But it makes no difference because MD5 implementations in servers are not good and complete. And the motivation from that, fixing that's about the same as AO. So, SSH, AO, MD5. TLS? Ugh. Right? So, we have currently, we're converging on a position which says clear text is okay for now. Well, in the IETF, we want to have one thing that's mandatory to implement. So I know I have interoperability. So what we're converging on today is clear text is currently mandatory to implement. And we strongly advise you to have the cache server very near your router. Okay? And MD5, SSH, TLS, and AO are, you're welcome to implement them. And be warned that in 3 years or so, AO is what's going to be mandatory to implement. And clear text will essentially be, you really don't want to do that. If you have a better suggestion, you know, given the actual state of running code and what's available, we want to use this crap. Okay, we don't want to wait for, you know, we know the purist is right and all that stuff, but I can't run it. If you have better suggestions for a strategy, but this is active discussion.
Just one addition to the list. IPsec has also been on the list under discussion. It also has problems, particularly dealing with routers. Routers can transit IPsec, but they're not so good at terminating it.
Yeah, they don't go to the control plane.
Not to mention the fact that it's a real pain in the ass to set up.
But the key thing is the authentication. I want to know who I'm talking to. Everybody happy with playing with the routers? Anybody want some help? Everybody can see the valids and invalids and the row is propagating and the little hamsters running around on their wheels and that's about the song. That's about the song. There's a bunch of people here who are very familiar with this stuff. Those people who are familiar with it and mucking with routers are me and Ed and a couple of more and more people after today, of course. Sounds like this group's up to speed, that group's up to speed back there. So feel comfortable to grab people and play. The stuff well, the Cisco's going to go down because the Cisco's routers we've been playing with are 18 routers running virtual routers running under something called Dynamips, which is a MIPS emulator on my Mac. That's why I'm holding this stupid 17-inch Mac still, is there are 18 routers running on it right there, right now. Okay? So we have routers up and around and about, and I have it running on real routers out in the world. And then the people who know about the protocol aspects, the IETF aspects, Russ might know a little, he's the chair of the IETF, Sriram, and I think Fenner's watched it, and Warren and Sam and these two guys, and Ed, and a bunch of others that are here. Sorry if I've missed you. Chris, who's back there, Chris and Sandy are the co-chairs of the IETF sidr working group, SIDR, Secure Interdomain Routing, that has all this stuff in obscure IETF-style documents being ground through. So feel free to corner people and play. Feel free to send email. My PayPal account is randy@psg.com. Where are my slide decks? They'll be posted at Nanog. I have to grind out the PDF, and then Sue Joyner will post them in the normal place that all Nanog people know. It'll be nanog.org under Presentation Archive. I will dump them in which archive? Well, yeah, but then you'd need URLs. They'll be at the standard Nanog place, but if you send me an email, I'll crank them out probably this afternoon or this evening or tomorrow morning, and they'll be available. Sir? I can't. Other questions? I hope you all had fun. It was certainly nice. It's the first time I've done the Juniper and Cisco at the same time. And I'm really sorry that I didn't update the Cisco configuration as well as the Juniper. The Cisco I last gave 2 weeks ago at AFNOG in Dar es Salaam, and the Juniper I did with Frank last week in Reykjavik. So it was much more up to date. It's not that I do these on the fly or anything. Bam. Pardon? What's the matter with your router? So you have your second row is in your GUI. You're running a Juniper router, but it's not showing up. It's not showing up in the show table yet. Right. Right.
And it's been a while. It does show up.
Okay, give it a while to show up. If it doesn't show up, could you please send a cut and paste to me, and so I can report a bug to the developers. Thank you. Get Rob to give you something that shows there, and you can say it's been 15 minutes since. Show the clear. Show the clear, and then show that it's not there, and that should. What would you want if you were debugging?
I would like Rob to have a lot more detail. That's what it does.
Oh,
Like trace options.
but the commands I taught you all said brief at the end.
Yeah,
I think if you
details seem to be very similar in the amount of detail.
don't know, since I was doing PowerPoint, I always did brief. I think Robert Feynman did something on the problems with PowerPoint. Tina, you okay? Or is Tom helping you enough? Yeah, you got Tom. So I'm going to take off this silly microphone, unless anybody has any more questions.
Randy, how often are we updating the cache
Server update is probably clocked to the problem at the publication point that's behind a firewall. So it's slow.
So it's 2 minutes. 2-ish.
This is something that in operation an hour or two is going to be reasonable, but 5 minutes is certainly too long for this lab. But I can give you the person who has the publication point behind the firewall, and you can go talk to him.